Okay, for shot number 2, we're going to go ahead and do a combination of supervised tracks and automatic tracks. Since this is a pretty steady scene and synteyes can handle it, I'm going to basically put some masks together and then do some supervised tracks just to show you, just in case you have to do your own supervised tracks because for some reason maybe the automatic tracking won't work. And then we'll finish off the scene with some automatic tracks since this scene is pretty smooth enough to have synteyes figure it out. So what we're going to go ahead and do is say File Open, and I'm going to choose the SHOT2 proxy under my plates. There we go. So I just choose the first frame. Everything here is set as is, and I'm going to go hit OK. And there we go. All right, so it's kind of like peruse through the scene here. As you can see, it's caching. And I'm going to go ahead and make a couple assumptions here. One is I don't want to be able to track this sky. It's a point of infinity, even though it'd be nice to track some of these trees and so forth, and that would be okay if we were doing a tripod shot. But in this case, we're doing a moving shot, and we don't want this information back here because it's going to confuse our solve. So we don't want the clouds. We don't want anything so far back that it's ridiculously far. We want to track the areas that are where we're going to be putting our whatever creatures, spaceships, in this case, a harvester machine. So I want to track in this general area as well as this general area, as well as mask out our actor as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to jump over to our masking tool, which is the second window over. I'm going to take this spline 1, camera 1, and we're going to go ahead and click on show the spline. So we don't have to see it or get accidentally grab a hold of it, which is a nice new feature inside of synteyes. So next we're going to go ahead and create a garbage mask. And in order to do that, we'll go ahead and just choose this little magic wand here. And the first thing you're going to set is its center for pivot. So I'll just kind of click right there. That gives us the center pivot, and here's the rotation. So again, I'm just going to come through here like so and do my best. All right. And then when I'm done, I'm going to come over here and right click, and then it'll close up the actual setting here. So now we're going to go ahead and start setting keys. So I'll go ahead and come through here and move the actual spline. So I'll just kind of move it. And I don't have to actually keyframe all these little points because the actor is actually receding and then coming towards the screen. So a good cheat way to kind of do a rough setup is just to basically key the group itself, the object itself, and then the individual CV points. So I'll get to a point where he's a little bit far. I'll take the center point and move it here. And I'll go ahead and scale this down a little bit. Now, it's not matching up perfectly with the actor, and I can come and tweak that a little bit later. So I'll go ahead and do that again. Come about here. Maybe I got to scale this down a little bit. This will save a lot more work than you can imagine. And I'm just putting it in the general area of where he's at. And he's super far away now from the camera. But that's okay. So you can see these little tick marks. We're just setting in our keys. And at this point, I probably want to start to change the keys on here. So I think I'll just leave them for now. I'll just keep moving this tour forward here. And then, of course, we're getting closer to the actor now, so we're going to start to scale this up. And do a little rotation. And now we're really close. So I'll go ahead and scale that up. It's important when you get very close to the actor where he starts to take up about 2/3 of your screen that you really want to isolate him, be as close as possible because you want as much information as possible for the computer to figure out. So I'm kind of use my middle mouse scroll wheel to kind of back off a little bit here and come to the final frame. Oops. Now you can see I accidentally created a new spline here, and I can just hit delete. It can happen sometimes. So I'll just go ahead and take this and bring it over here. Again, we've just roughed everything out. So as you can see, maybe I want to keyframe this a little bit, bring it over here. You want to go in between the keys, as you can see here. So I'll kind of come to this key, bring it over, go in between, just like in between animation. All right. As you can see, it's properly scaling. Okay. So now we just have the basic key set in, and I'll just put in just a couple more keys here because it gets kind of shaky. All right. So as you can see, we've just set in these basic keys, and I'm just kind of going through here, doing my best to counter animate this mess. Come between here, bring it over. That's fine. Again, I'm making sure the keys are in between the last two keys that were created. I don't want to put a key like right here because it'll shift too crazy. And it just kind of interpolates between. You just want to look for drifting. As you can see, we're kind of in between here. And I'll do that. Come over here. And now that we've just set the general group node by just keyframing this circle, we're going to start to keyframe the splines in between. All right, so let's start animating the CV points. So what I'll do is just kind of go over here to frame 20. Look for little CV points that need to be moved. And again, this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. There we go. So then I'll move over to one more frame. I've got his gun showing up in the shot now, so I'm going to start to extend this out a little bit. Again, synteyes will have the ability to kind of figure out this is an actor running through the scene. So you don't always have to kind of figure it out yourself. I'll go ahead and just kind of bring these in. The gun is now in now, so I can kind of bring this in. I can bring the head down a little bit. So we're not animating the actual object node, which is this right here. We're just doing the individual CVs now. And again, I want to be tucked in as close as possible to the actor during the track. I'm just going to scrub through. It gets cut off a little bit there. I'll just go ahead and bring these in. I'm going to watch out for his gun. Watch out for his foot. And I think that's good enough for now. So right now we've just gone ahead and kind of laid out the really rough track around the actor here so that none of this information gets tracked. And we get a little bit of a craziness here at the end, but I'm going to leave this just to show you how well synteyes will actually figure it out and say, okay, this is obviously an actor and so forth. So we'll just leave it be and not use it in as far as our final solve. All right, now we're going to actually go ahead and draw in our background masks so we do not actually end up tracking anything of the sky or this extremely far back infinite hills and trees and so forth. So I'll take my spline 2, which you can see is labeled garbage, and turn on show this spline so we don't have to see it. And that way we can just concentrate on this back area without accidentally selecting this spline. So the next thing to do is go ahead and we're going to choose a box this time, and I'll just go ahead and stretch out a box. And I'm going to get this stuff as close to the edges as possible here. So I'm going to kind of bring this in, and I'll go ahead and take this point and bring it in about right there. We're going to actually just be keyframing this point and this point, as you'll see. So I'll just go ahead and move through the shot, and we'll put in some rough keys here. So I'll go about every 20 frames. So at frame 20, I'll come in here and just go about right here. And then I'll just move over to frame 40. Again, we don't want to track anything back there because it's gonna be such a change of distance between this point and this point that it's gonna throw off everything. And you might think that, what are you talking about? It literally looks like there's no difference between what's being tracked here and here, but the computer sees it, even though we can't really see it. It might be just by a couple pixels, but that difference will totally throw off your solve. So it's very, very important to know that. A lot of people do all this tracking. They go, what's wrong with my solve? How come it doesn't work? That's because you've basically put in infinity points, such as these trees back here. And by doing that, you've totally messed up your solve. Again, we just want this area to be what we want to track. So there's a little bit of a lake back there. I'm going to go ahead and kind of leave that in. Do what I can. All right, so now we can see all of these keys I set with these little tick marks. We're going to go in between them now and just create keys of our own here. So this looks okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and turn on our masks again here. So I'll go back to spline number 2. We'll go ahead and do show this spline. So there's our character spline. And for the heck of it, we'll turn on our inclusive tracking mask here, which basically is this blue saying track everything in here. And it's very important that you have that spline. Sometimes people accidentally select that and then delete it. And because of that, they can't track. It'll say, I can't track anything. That's because we need to have something that says what's inclusive, what's exclusive, and so forth. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put some supervised tracks in here just to show you what happens. This is a little bit different than doing a tripod shot because we're moving towards an object. And as you can see here, like this, for instance, this little patch of grass, if we move slowly towards it, we're changing the angle of where it's at, and it's also sort of transmogrifying into something else. It's transitioning from a different angle, hence the image is changing from what we have here compared to what we have here. So we have to update what the search window is looking for as we move closer to it. As you can see, for stuff that's farther away, that's so far away that it's flattened, like for instance this tree, its image doesn't really change too much. It looks pretty much the same thing from frame 130 all the way to 0. And that's because we are not really seeing any parallax from here to there. It's almost like looking like a pan shot. But when we are moving towards an object right here where there's parallax, whereas we come closer to the object, it comes faster towards us and then comes off and shoots off to the side of the screen. Hence, we need to update the actual image that it's looking for. If, for instance, this was shaped like an upside down T, and it slowly turned into something that was sort of like just a straight line, that's different from what's here than from what's here. So we need to tell the computer what is new, basically, or the updated version of what it is. So in order to do that, I'll go ahead and jump over to our tracks here, which is our paw, and I'll go ahead and create a new track. And we'll go ahead and start with something that is pretty far. So let me see if I can find something that's worth kind of looking at here. Let's just go ahead and start with this little piece right here. So I'll go ahead and build up my window here, which is about right there. And then my search index I'm going to put about this far out because this is a pretty bouncy scene. So if I go ahead and just hit play now, let's see what happens. It's just going to start tracking. So I'll go ahead and hit play. So there it goes. And you see how it's changing shape as we move towards it? Now it's switched over, it's lost, it kind of like got confused and then flipped over to this piece right here. So let's go ahead and do that again. So I'll go ahead and delete that track, and we'll go ahead and create it again and bring our index out just a little bit. And I'll go ahead and hit start and get to a frame about right here and stop. And I'll backtrack a little bit. You can see there's a little bit of wobbling going on right here. But if I kind of backtrail to where it stops, I can go ahead and just tap into this window here like that, and I'll set a key, as you can see here. And I'll go ahead and hit place forward here. And as we can see, I'll go ahead and just kind of look at it. Now it's pretty smooth. There was no jumping. You have to keep an eye out right here for any drifting. Even though it might look like a solid track, if you get drifting of any kind where it's like, woo, back and forth, then you're going to have a problem, and you might think everything is safe. So every, say, 10 frames, I'm just going to tap on here, and it's going to update the image. So you can see right here, it already started to move a little bit. See that? So we're going to back up a little bit, sort of like ironing a shirt. I'm going to back up a little bit and continue over. Set a key, see where it's drifting, pull back, set a key. See how it drifted? It wants to drift. Now, let's say I want to increase my search index window for the signature. Well, I'll kind of back trail to where it kind of doesn't wobble or drift off and make a key. And now I'm going to take my search index and drag it out to get more information, because there's more information coming my way. We're a lot closer to this object than when we were at frame 0. So with that said, again, I'll just update it by tapping in here, and I'll go ahead and hit play. And now it's going to take a little longer, but I'm just going to look at the object and see how it drifts. See that? Drifting. I need to just make sure I get to the point where it starts to drift and then keep going. Now, if again, I can come in here and increase my search window, but because we are coming to the end of the track, as you can see here, things are kind of drifting away. Now, if I want to, I can take this search window now, and I'll set a key, and I'll go ahead and pull this in real close, and we'll go ahead and hit play. Usually you can get maybe a couple more frames in there. So let's go ahead and see what we can do here. So I'll go ahead and set a key, and I guess we're pretty much good. So I'm going to go ahead and lock that. Now, before I lock it, what I like to do is if it's super small search index for whatever reason, I like to bring it out really, really big so I can see everything clearly, and then lock it. And with it big now, I can look and make a better decision on what's going on here to make sure I got a proper track, an accurate track. So as you can see, as I come close, that's a pretty solid track. You see that? It's right on the money. It's always where it should be. That's because I took the time during the actual tracking to keep an eye on. That's just supervised tracks. So as always, you want to lock down this track and just make sure that it's locked away. Because if you don't lock it away, it'll go ahead and start tracking again with you accidentally selecting it and so forth. So let's go ahead and look around for other tracks. And sometimes you might want to start in the middle here. So let's see. I'm trying to come. I think I'll choose this little guy right here. And I'll just bring it in. And let's just start tracking. Now, one of the tools that you can use to not have to keep clicking in here is this right here. This basically says that I'm going to set an auto key every certain frames. So if you want to, you could set this to 6 frames. And watch what happens as we continue to track this. And look up here for the tick marks. This is sort of doing the work that I would have done, but it's setting a new, it's kind of refreshing the image every 5 frames. So I'll go ahead and play. And it, of course, came to an end because we came to the end of the shot. That's cool. Now let's go backwards. You can see it's starting to set frames, and you can watch it better from here. See it? Click, 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 click. Keeps going. And we're getting a solid track without having us click in here every 5 seconds. You see how it's changing? It's continuing to change and change and change. But if I go ahead and lock this, you can see we still have a very awesome solid track all the way to the end. There's a little bit of drifting here, if you can see it. We start out about right here, and then we come about right here. But still, that's a pretty solid track. I don't think we have to worry too much about it. If you want to get really careful about this, if you're very careful about this, I would come to the point where it drifts up a little bit. Turn this off, make sure we're pointing in this direction, and shave off this end here and lock it. So now you can see that we have a very, very confident, solid track. You can also do combining tracks as well. Sometimes you'll be able to track something here and then later on combine the track as we showed in previous examples. That is very, very needed in situations such as this because you can see this little area right here as we kind of move forward gets hidden and then it comes back. So this little patch of grass right here would actually be probably somewhere over here. So you can combine tracks on this as well. So that right there is just an example of proper supervised tracking. And you can set these keys to keyframe every other, maybe 10. 6 and 7 is pretty safe though. Okay, at this point we can hit a fork in the road as far as what we can do with what we have so far. Now we can go ahead and go a little bit of a pain in the route neck. Actually, both of these routes are kind of a pain in the neck. One is all supervised tracks, meaning I can just go from here and create supervised tracks and so forth. And I don't even have to create these masks per se. But I actually prefer that way. Just go in and do individual tracks, take the time, and just make sure that you're there to watch every single one of them. Because the computer has a habit of just doing a lousy track sometimes, or it just doesn't have enough information. You got a lot of foliage in this scene, a lot of stuff getting in the way of your tracking points. And just particularly this scene here is a difficult shot because you've got so much craziness going on. So in order to take the longer route, we're going to jump into actually doing some automatic tracking. So I'm going to come back here and I'm just going to choose either crash pan or normal motion. I'll go ahead and use crash pan because this is a pretty fast shot. As you can see, if this is a smooth shot, I can just do normal motion. So with that, go ahead, I'm going to jump over here to my fine tune, click on that and hit settings. Now this tells me basically what the tracks are going to be when the computer does the automatic tracking. The key spacing, will there be keys just like we created, like every so many frames? The tracking size. This is the actual search index window, and we can increase this to maybe something like 0.05, which is my preferred. Tracking aspect ratio, this is a squared box. If we wanted to bias it a certain way, say 0.5 or something, you get more of a rectangle. The U in V search needs to be bigger than the actual track size, as you can see here. So we're going to go ahead and adjust that to something like 0.008 for both the U and the V. So this is the outer rectangle. This is the inner rectangle. With that, I'm going to go ahead and keep that on so that it does the fine tune. So we're going to do the actual tracking, and then it's going to go back and retrack over those tracks with the fine tuning, and it'll give us a pretty solid double check result. But we're going to have to go in and individually look at all of the individual tracks because we will have errors. So the next thing we've got to do is go ahead and do run auto tracker. And as you can see, it's going to go through and track all of the different scenes. Then it's going to go through and do a very long process, which is the fine tuning. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to pause the video when we get to that because it's going to take a little bit of time. So as you can see, you can kind of bypass this fine tuning by just clicking it off, and within, I'd say, 10 seconds like we have here, you're going to come to the tracks. But at this point, we're going to go into the fine tuning in progress, which is going to go back, kind of retrace over the steps of what was tracked and try to fine tune it. It's still not going to guarantee us perfect solves and so forth. So I'm just going to let that do its thing and be right back. Okay, so we've gone through the fine tuning, and as you can see, we've got these little, or actually I should say big diamonds here, and these are our automatic tracks. So if I jump over to the paw here and I unlock one of these, we can start to see what we were typing in under the fine tuning. As you can see here, this is the size we made the inner box, this is the size we kind of made the outer box. So they're a little bit bigger, and they're big for a reason because we've got a lot of whipping and a lot of blurry areas here, especially in the backgrounds area. So we want to make sure we have big actual locations here. So I'll just kind of go through this real quick and just take a look. And if I just take my view and bring this down to, say, maybe half speed and play it through and make sure I'm not moving play in reverse, everything's going to look pretty good, right? I mean, if you take a look at these green squares, everything looks pretty solid. I can look at this from the naked eye and go, oh yeah, it looks fine. I'm ready for a solve. But if you look closely, and the way you can do that is to go to quarter speed. We'll just kind of peruse through here and hit play. And again, I can kind of take a look. You can see this little automatic track is wobbling around. We've got all types of just different wobbling going on here. And a lot of these tracks are no good. Even if you might look at them and go, oh, they look perfectly fine to me. Well, unfortunately, they aren't. And that just pertains to this specific scene. So how can we go through and kind of find out what's good and what's not? Kind of choose between the wheat and the tares here. So what I'll go ahead and do is jump over to the graph editor. And as you can see, if you hold down your middle mouse button, here's all of the tracks. And you can see we didn't get a lot in this area here as far as the timeline, because this is where the camera kind of whips around. And we got a lot at the end, and we got a lot at the beginning, very long tracks. But there's a reason why, if we kind of pull this into this little area right here, because the camera kind of pans around. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Here's where it's like, whoa. So there's a lot of crazy motion there that the camera was not able to pick up. So you have very short tracks, if any. So what we're going to do is, and what I usually like to do is kind of isolate my graph editor here, like so, and hold down my middle mouse button. Again, there's no sort of column I can go up and down with. I have to use my middle mouse button to drag up and down. Is go through these tracks individually and judge them from over here to see if they're any good. So, and I mean every single track you're going to have to go through. And I know you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. Well, then go for doing supervised tracks. That's the way I do it. And you'll be able to decide what goes faster in this circumstance. So let's go ahead and take a look. So here's track number 2, track number 3. These are the tracks that we manually tracked because they have just a square here, as you can see. Go ahead and grab this one here. So we know that this one was the one we did. We know it's good. We know that 3 is good. Okay, so let's go to track number 4. Okay, so track number 4 looks good. And you want to look at specifically the end of the shot and the beginning of where the tracks start kicking in. So the middle's usually okay, but it's at the end that you get a drift or something goofy. So I'm going to go through these individually. So here's track 5. And I see a little bit of jittering there, and I'm not going to chance it. So I'm going to go ahead and with my cursor here by this number, and in the actual scroll, I'm going to hit delete and get rid of that one. So I'm going to move on to track 4. That looks good. Track 6. Looks good. You got to really be careful because you can really see, like, for instance, right here, it's like, woo! Now, do I have to get rid of this track completely? Not necessarily. What I can do is I can unlock the track, back up to where it gets kind of goofy, trim it, and then lock it, and then kind of just peruse it one last time to make sure it's good. So I'll go over to track 8. And that looks good. Track 9. And I'm going to go through all these with you just so you can get an idea of what problems can occur, what to look for, because a lot of tracking tutorials don't really teach you too much. They kind of say, oh, here you go, hit the button, it works. And it's just like, yeah, that's great. I want to get into detail of what I need to be looking for. And that's what I'm trying to do as far as this tutorial being a little bit long for the tracking portion. Because I want you guys to get solid tracks, and I want you to know what to look for, and not to just to assume that everything is perfectly fine. So just going to go through here. That looks good. Keep an eye out, because you can see in these light blue areas here that we're going to have issues. Like right here, it's like, woo! Seems it was doing fine, and then all of a sudden it kind of started drifting. Look for drifting as well as the jerking when it goes off the actual screen. So I'm going to go ahead and shave that, lock it again. Always lock your tracks. And say, again, look at the beginning and the end of the shot. So I'll go to track 15. So you can see right there, if just one of these tracks was left in here screwed up, it would totally throw off our solve, and we'd be searching. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're searching through a needle and a haystack of needles. We want to make sure that every one is perfect. That's one of the problems I kind of had at the beginning of doing tracking and learning tracking. Again, it's like learning how to play the violin. You just got to practice. It's not something that you ever, master completely, and it's not something you just pick up and go, oh, I got it. Yep, a lot of these are really bad, especially around this area. Now remember, when we were looking at this, everything looked fine inside of our viewer, even at quarter speed, but as you can see, we're really picking up a lot of errors here. We'd have never known it. So I'm going to go through here crazy style here and just start to delete these. As I'm deleting this, I'm losing information for the scene. As you can see, this is just not doing well, and it's not because of synteyes. Synteyes is a wonderful program. It tracks unbelievably well. It's just the fact we've got, as you can see here, foliage in front of foliage. It's just in the way, and it's causing a problem with the tracks. So besides that, I think it's even doing a good job. I mean, could you imagine? It's tracking something with junk in front of it. So it's doing a pretty good job. Again, I just like to choose the most difficult shots. As you can see here, look at this. This little jitter here will throw off your entire scene. So I'm going to go ahead and just take what I can and do some shaving. Save what you can. Don't waste. See, like things start to come back online around right here. So let's go ahead and shave that. Again, all over the place. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. 37. You can't erase these kind of over here. You have to have your cursor over here and in the actual slider, and then you can hit delete. It's kind of goofy in the way it works. So again, we got a drift there, so I'm going to go ahead and shave this. Let's salvage what I can. And we're at frame 45. We still got 123 to go. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and then I'll be able to just kind of peruse through all of these as is and just move on to the next lesson. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at our graph editor. And as you can see here, after weeding out all of those probable problem auto tracks, we have a problem here because we got red areas that say danger, danger, this isn't going to track really well. And if we wanted to, we can go ahead and just try to track this and we'll see what happens. So I'll just go under solve here and hit solve and see what happens. And it's solved pretty quick. The faster your solve, the better your solve probably is. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and let's just kind of take a look and see what happened here. Now, it solved quick because it only solved up to a certain point. So if we can see, I'll go ahead and switch over to the camera here. You can see that we got a solve here. All of a sudden, we get a break. You see that? It breaks, and it continues to break like so. So what happened was we got to that point on the graph editor where we had a break. So I'll go ahead and show it to you again here, which is about right here. And that's where the computer kind of like said, I don't get it, So let's go ahead and take a look at our quad view here and see what happened. As you can see, the camera is just sitting there. It's not doing anything. It starts to take off about here, but it just could not figure out what to do for the rest of this. So we need to feed it more information. So I'm going to go ahead and do undo 3D solve and kind of step back here. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and start to put in some supervised tracks in here. And this, like I said before, is where the fork in the road kind of meets, where we basically have the choice of whether to just do all supervised tracks or do some lousy tracks that the automatic tracking will give us, and some of them will be errors, and we got to weed those out. So when you figure out the time that it takes for you to kind of weed out all the bad ones and then go in and do more supervised tracks, it takes about as much time as just doing supervised tracks. Except there's more chance of error because one of these might be a problem child, sort of troublemaker in the background without you knowing, because there's a little bit of drift or something and it's going to fight the solve. But I'm going to go ahead and just take what I have now, which is a couple of supervised tracks and a whole bunch of weeded out, as best as you can get, auto tracks, and add some more basic tracks that are all supervised. And that should give us more solves. So we're going to continue to work at this until we don't have red in these areas and yellow as well. And let's see if we can get some gray in there as well, which is a guarantee of a decent solve. All right, so let's jump in and get some supervised tracks in. So I'll jump to my graph editor, and I'll start in the general area of where the problem area is right here, which is the first kind of red zone. And as you can see here, this is the reason why we're getting such a bad break. It's because there's nothing out here right now to track. So again, I'm just going to jump in over to my paw, go ahead and create a track like so, and make a big enough search index. And I'll set my keys to probably more like 4 keyframe every 4, because the image is changing pretty quick here. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll go forward. As you can see, every 4 frames we're getting a nice tick mark there. We've lost information, so let's go ahead and work our way backwards now. And let's go ahead and just double check our track, and looks pretty good. A little bit of a drifting from here to here, so I'm going to cut it a little short just to be safe. There we go. And I'd say we're pretty good. So let's go back again, take a look and see, still in our problem area here, which is somewhere around here. And let's start to look for tracks that we can use. So I'll grab a piece there. I'm going to also go ahead and create another track really quick. And only do 2 at a time, I recommend, and hold down Shift and grab the other one. And now you can go ahead and with this set the key to 4, go ahead and do 2 tracks at one time. It actually can save you some time, but you got to be careful, because if you leave a track kind of left to its own devices, it'll start to get goofy. So let's go ahead and I'll just reverse it and move these forward. Wait until they break. There we go. There's 1 broke, 2 broke. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these individually. So I'll go ahead and grab this one and lock it. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we got here. So we're drifting a little bit at the beginning, so I'm going to cut it a little bit short. And I'll go ahead and go this way and cut it. Because as you can see, there's a little bit of drifting. Not a lot, but we are dealing with something that's a fluttering in the wind. So you got to be very careful with that kind of stuff. So I'll grab the other track, see what we got here. And I think I'm going to cut it short about right here, because again, there's a little bit of drifting. Look for the drifting, just look where the general point that it's supposed to be at. Again, let's go back to our graph editor. We're starting to fill in the holes here, so I'm just going to go again into this yellow area, find something else to track, maybe something over here, and let's go for a bigger search index. And we'll just go backwards. Always make sure you have these auto keys set on. If you don't, you're going to be in trouble. So you can see we got foliage getting in the way here, and that's going to affect our track. So I'll just go ahead and move this forward. Now let's go ahead and just investigate the track, play it through quick with our scrub. And it looks like it's doing pretty good, despite the fact that a foliage piece kind of got in the way. Let's go ahead and take a look here. All right, so here's another big problem area. So this is where the camera goes really wobbly and nutty. So I'm going to go into the heart of darkness here, into the center of it, and let's go ahead and just pick out some points right here. I'll go ahead and play that through. Again, this is really helping, setting this key to 4. If you didn't do this, you would be having an issue right now. So I can already tell there's a little bit of drifting already starting there. So I'm going to get about right there, shave it, and call it a day on that one, and play it through. And there's also, you can see there's still a little right there. See it? That's drifting. So I'm going to pull it back again, and shave it. So again, we go back, as you can see here, and just kind of start working our way back and forward. I'm still going to stay right here in the center and see if there's something that I can get a hold of. Even if it's very short, it doesn't kill me. And I'm going to go ahead and start bringing my keyframes down to something like 2 for now. And key smoothing, I'm not going to have so high. Key smoothing basically kind of interpolates and smooths between the track points, so I'm going to keep that somewhere around probably 2 itself. So, and we'll go ahead and do this just to kind of go through. We still want that roughness that kind of comes in with, and this is probably too much right here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. See if I can grab this piece right here. And as you can see, synteyes is doing an awesome job with the fact that stuff is getting in the way, even right there with the actor's leg getting in the way. So I'll go ahead and kind of back that up. And as you can see, we've got a keyframe every 2 frames, basically. So I'll go ahead and go backwards now. All right, so let's take a look at where we're at. And we lose a little bit of it right about there. So I'll go ahead and shave that off. Look for the drift. It does occur, even right here. It feels like there's a little bit of drift. So I would even shave it back as far as here. There we go. So we're at the actual left edge of this little bush instead of on the right edge as we did before. All right, so let's see where we're at. Again, we got a lot of work to do here, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and just go through and make as many points as I can. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the graph editor now. As you can see, I've added all these extra tracks here. That's why they have all these little iterations of 2 frames keyframed. Here's all of our automatically tracked files that we went through and weeded out. And we are in the green and gray zone, which is really good. So the next step is to go to a solve. So I'm going to go back here and turn on solve and watch away. Now I'm already worried because you can see how long this is taking. It's taken some iterations. It's going, oh, error, error. But it's eventually getting there. This is a very long shot. It's 330 frames. But we did get a decent solve here under 11 seconds, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing for a program like this. I don't think I've seen any other tracker system that can do it this fast. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And we're going to go ahead and just kind of go through here. First thing I want to look for is I'm going to go from my quad view to my camera view. And I'm going to take this to about 1/4 speed. And we're going to go ahead and play it through. And what I'm looking for is for these little tiny X's to either drift off or move from where they should be in the location. So take a look at the little X's. This is your solve data. And you want to see that these solve X's stay put on the ground. If they don't, you've got a problem. And you're really going to see that shift when we do stuff like whip around like we're doing right now. So we want to like come up here and just tap back this to kind of overlay certain areas and say, are these little X's sticking to where they are on the ground? And if you see any drift, you want to go back. And so far, it's looking pretty good. So I'm just kind of looking around at these X's, especially when we get to these whip pans, we want to take a real close look to see what's going on. Like for instance, if I come over here, kind of go through the shot, I'm not a big fan of this little X right here. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Kind of zoom up on it. And it seems like it's doing okay. It looked like I thought there was a little bit of a drift there. But you got to have a really keen eye for this stuff, and you got to take your time inside of this program. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to keep going here just to be safe, all the way to the end. It ain't over till the fat lady sings. And everything's looking pretty good. The second thing I want to do is I want to jump over to my quad view. So I'll just finish this out to make sure there's no jittering. I'm going to go to my quad view. We're going to start moving in on this little blue line. Now already from a distance I can see in here that I have a very nice solve, a nice smooth line. This is a bumpy shot, but we are on a Steadicam, and that should show up inside our computer here. So let's go ahead and take a look. This may look like a real whip squiggly line, but we're looking at it from a side view here. And we're actually not looking at it correctly. The best one I like to judge is usually the top view. The top view is usually the best. But go ahead and take a look at the other views just to kind of get an idea. But judge your top view above all. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the top view. And get pretty close on this guy. And just go ahead and play him through. And at this point, we don't have to do a speed of 1/4. We can go probably normal speed, and I'll go hit play. I'm just going to follow them through and look for jitters, little jig jags that kind of come out. And I don't see anything. I see a little bit of bumpiness right here, so let's go ahead and kind of investigate this area. So there's a little bit of bumpiness kind of like right there. So I'm going to leave my camera there, and let's go to our other views. Say, let's go to our right view. Zoom up on our camera a little bit. Get really in there. You can't see anything from this far back. So it still looks pretty smooth. It seems like we start to get a little bit of a bumpiness here on this end. So again, I'll take my right view. Maybe I'll go to my front view now. And I can see in my front view that it's pretty smooth. Again, the front view, the left and right view can be confusing because this looks like a zigzag, like it's really getting out of control. But what we're really looking at is something over a far distance. So it's not really causing any problems. When you see a little bit of a spike, like a little sharp V in here, that's when you got problems. That's when you got to start worrying. Okay. So with that said, I think we have a pretty solid solve. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of switch to the quad view really quick. And let's kind of take a look at our top view here. There's this little thing here called coordinates. And this is, as you can see, we have in our solve a Y up. And we did that by making sure that when we did edit preferences, we did Y up for Maya. So it's already set up to Y up for Maya. Otherwise, it would be Z up for something like 3 Studio Max, which we don't want. We want to be able to be Y up in Maya. So let's go ahead and look at our scene. Let's look for just a basic L shape here. So I'm going to kind of look through here and see, okay, this looks like an L shape. This right here, this right here, and this right here. So this will allow me to kind of orientate. As you can see from this side view here, we've got this kind of Dutch angle going on for the ground plane pieces. So we want to flatten that, at least a rough orientation inside of synteyes, and we'll kind of finalize that inside of Maya. So I just want to get a rough orientation. So I'll go coordinates, and this will kind of set sort of the origin point. So I'll go ahead and click 1, 2, 3, like an L. Does it want to change it? Yes. Give it a second, hit OK. Now, as you can see from our side view, we have a nice parallel, kind of rough parallel going on for the ground. And if we go to our top view, our camera is right where it should be. So we have a nice top view, a nice side view. You might have to hit undo a few times and do this little coordinate L thing, but it actually works out pretty well and you get a nice rough orientation. Again, nothing's perfectly orientated until you get inside of Maya. So with that said, we already did a solve, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to go ahead and call it shot 2, just like we did before. Shot 2, tracking, and I think I'll call it 10, and then I'll do underscore solved. Save and iterations, it's definitely going to help. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and save. And I'm going to go ahead and export a Maya ASCII file. Maya files, and here's the first track shot that we solved. I'll just go ahead and call this shot 2, I think it was track 10 solved. And that's pretty much it. So I'll go ahead and hit save. The clipping planes we'll fix later, and I'll just go hit OK. So the next step now is to jump into Maya.